Hi, and again, I share thanks from the Conservation Commission for giving us this grant and allowing us to do some of our work. So part of our community outreach involves creating pollinator habitat in public spaces, which we hope then serves as a model for best practices so that people can then see what's possible in their home landscapes. Next slide. I think, yeah. So we have an existing pollinator garden in a public space on our town green that was installed by volunteers in 2018 through a grant from the Native Plant Trust. They had a program called Pollinate New England, and we were one of 2 Vermont locations that got this garden installation. We in a couple years ago, the town took down some red maples next to the town hall. And we decided that that might be an opportunity to, again, expand some of our public gardens. And so we thought that would be a good opportunity. And so we went to the select board and pitched our idea to take this little patch of land that's basically between the driveway to town hall and the parking lot. So it's really like a little spit of land, and see if we could turn that into some nice pollinator habitat. So the trees were taken down by the tree warden, and what was left after that was a very large clump of daylilies, the orange kind. So those in a lot of municipalities, those can be considered invasive and they don't really have a lot of pollinator benefit. And so, we decided to take those out. Plus, we knew that with their ability to spread rapidly, we just figured that would always be in competition with our plantings. So we did a couple of service days, took out the daylilies, and then we also planted 4 service berry trees. So we used Amelanchier laevis as our foundation plantings, and so those went in first. And then the fall, this last spring in it must have been 2023. Anyway, this year we planted plugs. So I guess the one thing our select board had sort of put before us as a challenge was to keep it looking relatively tidy. So if you know anything about wildlife gardening, that's sort of antithetical to wildlife gardening. But I took that challenge on and tried to choose plants that I knew were sort of better behaved, as they like to say. So we put in Helenium, which is known as sneezeweed, Pycnanthemum, which is mountain mint, put in some Echinacea, some Rudbeckia, Penstemon digitalis, which you may or may not be familiar with. That is foxglove beard tongue, some spring blooming pollinator plants. We have Aquilegia canadensis, which is the native columbine, and Zizia aurea, which is golden Alexanders, which is a host plant for black swallowtail butterflies. And then lastly, Aster oblongifolia, which blooms now and is also a great fall pollinator plant. So tried to spread it out among the seasons and tried to pick things that didn't get to be super huge with a tendency to flop and look disheveled. We got our plants all from relatively local nurseries, so Orwell, Essex, and Fairfax. Next slide. And again, we're trying to put these gardens in places where people will see them. So this is the view when you're coming on the sidewalk and getting to the town hall. There's a bench, there's, it's visible to people walking by. And so we thought that was another plus for that location. You can see astute viewers will see that there's milkweed in there and also some volunteer Virginia creeper. But for the most part, you know, it's those plantings that I mentioned. And because I used plugs, that's a little bit less expensive. And so you're starting out with a much smaller plant. So this was not like an instant garden. It's going to take a couple of years to really fill itself in. And that's okay too. But that's just sort of how I chose to do it, to stretch our grant dollars. Let's see. So yeah, next slide. So the second part of our grant project and pollinator habitat is this other area on our green. So another thing that we are charged with is sort of the general health care of the trees on our public green. And one thing we have noticed over the past few years is that around the trees, because of the lawn care service and people using the space and walking all around the trees, the area around the drip line was severely impacted. I mean, you can see how sad those roots on that sugar maple look. And so we decided to try to create like a win-win-win situation out of this. And so we are underplanting the drip lines of some of these trees with things like oak sedge, which is Carex pennsylvanica, and some ferns and other woodland perennials. And that serves multiple purposes. So it will provide habitat for moths and butterflies that are, you know, using the trees during their life cycle. And so it will give them a place to hide in the winter. It will prevent further compaction of the soil and root damage. And it also gives just this, we put these little fences around, so that the grant money was used to get these little fences as well. It comes in big rolls. So that also kind of gives a visual cue to the landscape company, because they were very often going right up to the trees with their equipment and causing a lot of damage to the bark. So next slide. So this is what it looked like a few weeks ago. We also have some educational signage up, and we have a QR code that takes us to the website. Next slide. I think that's the last one. And then again, we're modeling this on this soft landings concept, which is promoted by Doug Tallamy and Heather Holm. So that's visible through that QR code. And I just looked at our metrics behind the scene. It looks like from the time I put the QR code up to today, we got about 30 visitors. So that seems pretty good. I think that's all I have. Is that right?
Yeah, that's your last slide.
Okay, so thank you.